Welcome to the Wellfuel Podcast, your spot for everything gut health, detox, hormones, a healthy home, mold, and everything in between. I'm your host, Isabel Smith. I'm an integrative and functional registered dietitian and the founder of Isabel Smith Nutrition. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Wellfuel Podcast. This is Isabel, and I'm your host, and I'm talking today about how your gut and your brain are connected, how your gut health influences your focus, attention, mood, brain health overall, and your energy. When we're thinking about both brain health and energy, I'm not sure everybody dials it back to your gut. And if you haven't considered your gut, you're going to want to, because your gut is heavily connected how your brain behaves, operates, and also your overall energy. When we think about the overall, how on earth could your gut and your energy be connected? Think about it. Number one, your gut is responsible for extracting nutrients from your food. Key ones including B vitamins, CoQ10, iron. And if you're not doing a great job at that, then, from an extraction perspective, you're not going to have great nutrient bioavailability. So if you don't have great availability in your body of just general nutritional status, then that is the first and foremost important thing when it comes to why does somebody not have great energy? Thinking about what nutrients they may not be getting into their body, into their mouth, and then into their cells, that is the first piece that can be a super important thing to consider. When somebody comes to us and says, I'm really tired, the first thing I'm thinking about is let's check their absorption. We can do that super simply through looking at their vitamin D, their B12, their iron. That gives us a general overview of what is the status of their ability to absorb their nutrition through their food. So from there, we start to look at things like the gut health. Okay, if we've got all the right foods, maybe we'll have a conversation. Talk about what they're eating, how they're eating, when they're eating, what it looks like, etc. And then we move to the next step, which is, okay, what does the gut look like? What's the lining of the gut look like? What's the environment? Because if you've got an overgrown jungle in there, you're also not going to do a great job of modulating your food from the food that you eat to the nutrients that they contain, and from the nutrients they contain into your cells. And from the perspective of getting the nutrition from your mouth into your gut, and then from your gut into the bloodstream, then there's a whole extra step of getting the nutrients from the bloodstream into the cells. So we actually have, nutrient consumption, digestion, and then absorption that we have to work through. So if there's a major thing going on in the gut where there's either overgrowth or dysbiosis or a ton of leaky gut, somebody may not be extracting and getting the nutrition into there. So that's from an energetics perspective, always thinking about A, what somebody's eating, but B, how they might be absorbing, and then C, how they're utilizing, right? It's really a 3-step process. So again, if you have not considered your gut, whether your gut is symptomatic or not, and again, as I've said many times, and I said on the last podcast I just recorded, gut symptoms have not been a super prevalent part for me, but I can tell you my gut is definitely the majority of the problem, if not at least part of a big player in the problem of my body and my health overall. So back to energy. Okay, so we have nutrient absorption, right? We have dysbiosis, SIBO, SIFO, low stomach acid, poor digestive enzymes, all potentially contributing to lack of proper nutritional absorption, which also, of course, then, as we just talked about in a bunch of different ways, can influence how somebody has or doesn't have energy as related to their gut. Okay, so then when we get beyond, we consume the food, we put it in our mouths, and then we eat it, and then conceivably it goes from our gut into the bloodstream. Then we're talking about cellular, is the nutrition getting from there into your cells? And what is the status of your mitochondrial health? If you haven't listened to the short chain fatty acid podcast, you might want to do that. They're a super cool postbiotic, and they support mitochondrial health and function. And if you're not making enough of them, then that also could be affecting your overall energy. The health of your mitochondria, which of course can look like overall energy production, energy metabolism. And why that's important is in order to have proper short chain fatty acid production, we need a super healthy gut. We need super healthy carbohydrate metabolism, fermentation, in order to produce the short chain fatty acids, which then influence things like I just mentioned, mitochondrial health, which totally influences your gut health. So, I mean, your overall energy and of course your gut health. You see how this is all coming together? It's much more complex than my gut is or isn't a problem. It's much more like what's metabolically, cellularly happening in your body and in your gut in order to get us to a place where we're like, oh, not only is my gut not a problem, but it's actually doing the work for me that I need to do. Two completely different things. It's like when people come here with their blood work and I'm like, okay, there isn't maybe necessarily like a huge problem with your blood, but it's not optimized and you're not sufficient in your nutrients. Two completely separate things. So from an energy perspective, therefore, as well, gut health influences blood sugar, insulin, energy metabolism, glucose stability, blood sugar stability, etc. A person with a healthier metabolism can withstand longer periods of time without eating. Their blood sugar is more well regulated. They have more flexibility, remembering that our bodies were made to be tolerant, flexible beings. And as we go through space and time, and we are considering like what's happening in my body, why does it not feel like it should, et cetera, considering that the gut may be certainly part of the problem is a super important realization for many people. What would signs of poor gut health be? They're not always super obvious, I will tell you that. For me, it's been chronic inflammation, kind of chronic SIRS, lack of resolution of my overall Lyme mold kind of picture, inflammatory process. Whereas for others, it can be like bloating, gas, constipation. I'll give you some others: histamine issues, acne, trouble losing weight, hormone issues, obviously the bloat, gut, constipation, diarrhea, anxiety, insomnia, inflammation, hair loss, skin issues beyond just acne, toe fungus, obviously food sensitivities, blood sugar issues. Those are just some to name a few. So some of those directly look like the gut and some don't directly look like the gut. And so all this stuff, you're like, my energy stinks and I have terrible rosacea. Well, my friends, those two things are also probably connected via the gut. So let's pivot a little bit. So energy is super, super important and something I want you to consider in the overall picture of like, what's my gut looking like? And could my gut be part of the problem? For sure. Moving on to brain health. The brain is also heavily, heavily connected to the health of your gut, right? There's a highway that they connect with. One communicates with the other. So the microbiome and the bugs and the people who live in there are either communicating messages properly, doing the work for you, or they're not. So gut bacteria can help produce neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, GABA, which can regulate mood, cognition, focus, behavior. Remembering that everybody knows the statistic, but if you don't, I'm going to share it again. About 90% of serotonin, which is that feel-good neurotransmitter, is produced in the gut. And dysbiosis is gut bacterial imbalance. Dysbiosis can largely contribute to mood-related issues, anxiety, stress, trouble focusing, cognitive issues, and more. So if you are somebody who is like, I can't focus or I'm stuck on ADD meds or whatever, you might want to consider your gut. I was on them for 20 years. My gut is definitely a problem. There's also, I think, a connection between long-term use or use of stimulants and health, like gut lining, integrity issues, which also can perpetuate poor gut health. So all this is definitely connected, but the gut and the brain are heavily connected. So like I said, dysbiosis may show up as symptoms like brain fog, poor memory, lack of focus, right? So if you're like, oh, it's not my gut, again, it probably is. I think that's the overall gist here is like, if you're sitting there being like, it's not my gut's healthy, like it probably is your gut, right? When in doubt, it's usually the gut. And remembering that leaky gut can also be commingled as leaky brain, right? Leaky gut can allow inflammatory compounds like lipopolysaccharides and changes in other types of inflammatory markers related to what is or isn't produced in the gut further down the line. But some of these LPS, as we call them, can enter into the bloodstream, triggering neuroinflammation, and neuroinflammation can also show up like brain fog, fatigue, etc. So remembering that your gut is definitely part of the problem is really key here. So short chain fatty acid production is largely dependent on a healthy gut. And short chain fatty acids are really key for the mitochondria. Go and listen to that podcast because I dive deep into it. But mitochondria inflammatory chemicals that can influence focus, attention, kind of the state of the overall health of the brain, and also contribute positively to your focus and attention. Um, and the other part is how you're eating your food, how your body is absorbing and digesting can also influence your brain and your gut and your energy. So there are a lot of factors here that go into it, but I just want to shine light on the potential for your overall brain, energy, health, and happiness to be tied to the health of your gut for sure. A few other key components here that I had made some good notes on before hopping on here. Don't forget, like things like stress and sleep can also impact the health of the gut brain connection. When people come to us, I'm like, talk to me about your food, talk to me about your sleep, talk to me about your stress. I ask for a particular reason. The body is not going to function as properly, as well, as easily in those scenarios where you are more stressed, sleeping less, and some of it we can help, some of it we can't help. But stress triggers hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which increases cortisol, right? Disrupts digestion and the gut microbiome, sleep. This is where people are like, why am I gaining so much belly fat? Lack of enough sleep and increased stress also reduces microbial diversity. So if you're in a chronic stress state, may want to consider what you're eating, of course. As always, I think we all should consider what we're eating, as well as, appropriate probiotics, etc. You also might be experiencing more reflux, super common, right? Because stress also slows digestion, causing gut motility issues, right? Or speeding it up. Some people have diarrhea in the wake of stress, and some people have terrible chronic constipation. It can go both ways. So what can you do about that? Just be aware. I think awareness is the first number one important piece when we're talking about, like, what can I do? Just be aware of it. When's it happening? How's it happening? How are you feeling when it's happening? What's it doing, to you, for you, in the grand scheme of some stress is good, too much stress isn't good. So has it become like a not good thing in your body? And are you doing anything to help support yourself? You taking any time for yourself? Are you doing any meditation? Are you exercising? Are you feeding yourself reasonably? I will tell you personally, sugar and alcohol only wind everything up. They don't wind anything down. So you might want to look more deeply at kind of what you're eating and how you can help yourself just support your body a little more. This information is not to freak you out. It's to make you aware and help you make changes and choices to support your body. If you're like, all I can get is canned vegetables and frozen ones, cool, that's great, right? That's awesome. Do your best with organic, but if you can't, don't worry about it. Just eat the vegetables. Because the overall picture is that if we can get relatively enough sleep, help to manage our stress levels, try to feed our bodies good food, or at least be mindful of the balance of good to bad, right? And do it on a very routine, regular basis in some capacity, talking about getting the food through the digestive system and absorbed is a much easier, more achievable, attainable conversation than, oh, I'm not eating, not sleeping, not whatever. Of course, you're not going to feel well. And of course, your energy is going to be kind of in the toilet. I remember in my own journey, dialing heavily into my diet and not just relying on supplements and such like that made such a difference to my overall healing trajectory, the way I felt in my body, the way it felt to be me, like all the above. So I offer that because I think sometimes people can be very caught up in like supplements and all that sort of stuff. And that's great. Believe me, I'm looking at my supplement container here being like, oh yeah, I haven't started my day. Like these are my supplements and they're amazing and they do me great, right? But I also eat really well. And I'm going to record a separate podcast on this, but I had really changed my diet and I think it was contributing to some inflammation that I wasn't really dialed into. So I'm back on the wagon and gluten-free and dairy-free, and I already feel a lot better. So don't forget about what you eat. What you eat is highly important to the overall health of your body, how it feels, and the health of your gut. And if you haven't considered your gut in the land of energy and focus and attention, I would highly recommend that you dial in and do so because I think you might find that it is helpful for you to pay attention to those two things. So as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next time on the Wellfuel Podcast right here. And in the meantime, don't forget to check us out on social media because we have a ton of stuff going on over there, or check us out on our website, isabelsmithnutrition.com. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in. As always, thanks so much for listening to the Wellfuel Podcast. We're so happy to have you. To make sure you don't miss a beat, please subscribe either on Apple or Spotify because we have tons of great content. If you want to make sure that you're up to date on everything we're doing in the business with our clients and new offers and all the things, make sure that you check us out at Isabel Smith Nutrition on Instagram and isabelsmithnutrition.com. See you guys soon.